Hey everybody, here reviewing Shaun Attwood's UnMaking a Murderer again. This time we are reviewing Strategy 6. Strategy 6 is pay the public defenders to work for the prosecution. And we all recognize that as being Len Kaczynski and his little buddy Michael O'Kelly. But we'll get to that in a second. So, just want to say again, like I did in the last video, if you are just coming off of Making a Murderer, I really suggest that you read this book. It's just going to give you a lot of like necessary information that you probably have missed out on up to this point. It's going to give you some good idea of where you might start digging when you find the documents and stuff like that. So, or if you're that inclined, but. Anyways, if you have watched MAM and you believe Stephen and Brendan are innocent, then yes, I definitely suggest you read this book to get you some more information on it. So, just wanted to say that. So, moving on. This chapter, I'm going to apologize in the beginning here. I usually try not to get angry on my channel. I try not to be angry or mad on my videos, but this one I'm gonna apologize in advance. I may get a little bit agitated by this one because this strategy is really hard to read. It's very difficult to read, and because when you watch what Michael O'Kelly does to Brendan, and you see the way that he goes about getting Brendan to confess, and you see Brendan trying to resist it, but O'Kelly just keeps offering that carrot of, you know, if you want to get out sooner, if you don't want to spend your whole life in jail type of thing, and basically bending Brendan to his will and other things that I'll get to here, you'll see. I'm going pretty deep on this one. I'm going to be pretty thorough on this particular strategy because I know a lot of people out there will skip. I know there's a lot of people out there, people that really love Brendan, that they will skip this chapter, or they will not be very keen on reading this chapter. So I can hopefully give people the main gist of this chapter without them, you know, having to do that. But I just know a lot of people that have trouble reading this type of stuff about Brendan, so that's why I say that. Anyways, we start out this chapter. He talks about, first off, that the public defenders in Wisconsin, above all other states, essentially, is the stingiest with paying its public defenders. Basically, it allots the least amount of money to public defenders in Wisconsin, which is, I mean, it is what it is. They pay theirs the least, but I mean, it's just like, geez. I mean, there seems like so many issues with Wisconsin, but whatever. That's a small issue, so we'll move on. Well, maybe not so small, but reduced sentences are generally often offered to parties that are believed to be guilty of a crime. And as the prosecutors will offer plea deals and those sort of things to avoid having to go to court, because going to court is a huge expense and takes up a lot of taxpayers' money and stuff like that. So if prosecutors can settle it before that, then it's helpful to them and helpful to the county or state or whatever. So it's generally accepted that they'll give the person less time if they just admit guilt and there doesn't have to be a trial. So the thing is that negotiating these plea bargains can oftentimes make these prosecutors use the tactics of used car dealers, essentially, in orchestrating these deals and bargaining out these, or negotiating out these plea bargains. So, you know, it's kind of a funny analogy he uses, that used car salesman, but you think about it. I mean, you're walking into a room trying to offer somebody, oh yeah, you can either go to jail for a long time if we go to trial, or if you just go ahead and sign this paper saying you're guilty, then you'll get out in less time. Yeah. So it's, yeah. I mean, essentially you're trying to choose between a very bad option and just a bad option, you know. So, but often the fear of not having things go their way in court will often make people go ahead and plead, you know, make a plea and bargain their sentence down. So, that's the way it goes. So the worst of public defenders, they work against their potential clients, and they work for the benefit of their own paymasters, which their paymasters are the state. The state is the one who pays these public defenders. So you see the problem there is that the state is also the prosecution. So there's a kind of a little bit of a problem there. But this has led to the term, they call public defenders sometimes in certain circles public pretenders, because they're pretending to help you at various times. So I've heard that term a lot of times before I seen it in Shaun's book. I've heard that term a lot. That's commonly used sometimes with public defenders. So just throwing that out there. But the thing is, though, is that with Stephen was able to get the settlement from his first wrongful conviction. He had to settle for a heck of a lot less than he was supposed to get, because he was in a bad spot that he was put in by who? Right. But he was able to get his settlement, and he was able at least to put on some kind of a show. He was able to put on some kind of a theater to combat Kratz's in the prosecution's theater, and gave him a fighting chance. But it turns out it wasn't enough. In this case, couldn't combat the press conference and the sullying of the jury pool and all the various things that were just horrendous in this case, really. He wasn't able to fight that, but Brendan was even worse off. Brendan was even less fortunate, because Brendan didn't have any money. He was stuck with public defenders, and he had to hope that they were going to take up his cause and be a champion for him, but Len Kaczynski wasn't the one. He was not the one that was going to be trying to help Brendan. He basically walked in and was seeking to resolve this whole thing as quickly as he could. He wanted to be able to get in there, get paid, or spend as little time as possible and get as much money as he could out of it. And to boot, he wanted the media coverage. That's, I think, a main reason why he decided to take Brendan's case, because he knew that he would be in the news. We go on now where O'Kelly is now, we move on to this little interrogation of O'Kelly's with Brendan. And he basically starts out on Brendan with just doom and gloom. He's just they're looking to give you life plus 72 years. He's trying to scare Brendan with that. And, he's saying, at least this way you'll have to spend some time in prison, but you'll be able to get out and not have to spend as much time in prison, basically, because somebody died, which I found an interesting statement. Because somebody died, this kid has to go to prison. I mean, obviously we know that O'Kelly believes he was guilty, but I'm just sitting there looking at that statement just alone on its own, going, because somebody died, Brendan needs to go to prison. Yeah. So, and it's funny, as we see through this whole thing, there are certain points where Brendan really scores a victory, but I'll kind of talk about that a little bit. Where he kind of fires back at O'Kelly at one point that I really loved it. I read it off to my girlfriend because I thought it was so funny, and we were just cracking up. It was just a great line by Brendan. I'll get to that. Stephen, he then threatens Brendan by saying that Stephen could then lie and testify against Brendan, and then Stephen would get the plea deal, and Stephen would get the lesser sentence, and so he's trying to intimidate Brendan with that. Stephen could beat you to it. Type of thing. And it's just wow. He tells Brendan that Stephen is saying that Bobby and Brendan had a part in it. That he tells Brendan that Stephen is saying this. Now, I never heard that. Maybe I missed that, but I've never heard that. So, and basically, I think Brendan didn't believe him either. But then O'Kelly threatens to leave Brendan. He just threatens to leave because Brendan just isn't wanting to go along with what O'Kelly's wanting to do. Brendan just keeps saying, but I didn't do anything. And the more that Brendan says, I didn't do anything, the more O'Kelly was getting mad, saying, you're going to have to tell the truth. I need to know what kind of person you are. I need to know that you're sorry. And I need to know, and you need to tell me the total truth. And you need to tell me all of the truth. You can't lie, not even one lie. If you tell me one lie, I can't help you. And he's just going off with this whole thing on Brendan. And Brendan keeps just saying, keeps maintaining, he's like, but I didn't do anything. He said, I went over and stood by the fire. That's it. You know, I mean, it's amazing. But Kelly's sitting there coming at him with all this doom and gloom, just raining down on him. And keep in mind, he just was in court and found out that the court was not going to, deny his confession to be admissible. That he found out that the court was going to allow the confession to come in as evidence. So, he's already got that bad news, and then he's got this guy O'Kelly coming in, giving him all this doom and gloom and all that. And so O'Kelly asks Brennan, "Are you sorry? And would you do this again?" To which Brennan says, "I don't know." Because because he's not feeling comfortable with O'Kelly's questions, and so he's offering a lot of "I don't knows" to him. Anyways, he says, "You don't know if you're sorry? Why not?" And Brennan says, "I didn't do anything." He just says it straight up. And then O'Kelly, of course, comes back with, "That's not true," and starts working on Brennan again. We move on now where he gets a little bit upset at Brennan at this point now. He gets upset because he's trying to talk to Brennan, but he feels like Brennan isn't listening to him, or he feels like he's not getting Brennan's full attention because Brennan's not looking at him. Well, obviously Brennan's not looking at him. Brennan's just like sitting there going, "Oh my God, this guy's just like the other two cops that were trying to push me around." That was going through his head. He's sitting there thinking about Wiegert and Fassbender. Totally. So when he's there with O'Kelly, he's probably just sitting there just going, "Oh my God, here we go again." And I mean, I would, if I was him in that situation. I'd just be like, "Oh, good Lord." But he doesn't know enough of what to do and how to like stand up for himself and basically assert himself with Kelly. He's 16. He's a 16-year-old kid, and he's not ready. He doesn't have the tools to deal with the situation that's in front of him, and it's sad. It really truly is. And Len Kaczynski was there to help him. He was supposed to be there to help him, and it's pretty sad and pathetic, really, when you think about it. But so then you move on to O'Kelly actually grabs his arm. He actually grabs Brennan's arm. He's like, "Look at me." Right? I mean, it's like, geez, man. On top of all this, all else, you're going to lay hands on him too. So then in this interview, O'Kelly, in this video, Brendan claims that the RAV4 was not in the garage. And which doesn't match with the story that was told to Wiegert and Fassbender on March 1st. In that story, the RAV4 was in the garage. So that's one difference, kind of problematic difference with the story that O'Kelly got Brendan to tell here on March 13th or May 13th. That differs from the story that was told on March 1st. So, along with other problems, we know that where Brendan changed his story. All right, so according to the story that Brendan tells O'Kelly, is basically that there was the fire only burned for a couple hours. They started it, it died down a bit. They threw more wood on it twice, and then after that, Steven said, "You should go home. Your mom's probably worried about you," or whatever, some such thing. And they both left the fire there to burn out. And that's what Brendan says here. So a 2-hour burn would certainly not have done the trick. The next bit, and this is a particularly this really gets me. This bit, it's something that has stuck out for me from the beginning when I very first started looking into this stuff, and that is the fact that Brendan's story, the story that he originally told. The story of what he did when he came home from school on October 31st of 2005, that story has never changed. That story has always stayed totally consistent. He came home, he played some video games, he got a call from Blaine's boss or whatever, he got a call from Steven, he got ready, Steven called back, he went over and hung out with Steven by the fire for a while, came home, all that. That story always stays the same. It's always been the same when he tells it. They get him to tell a different story, and then as soon as he gets out of their influence, he immediately snaps back to telling his original story, and that story is always the same. unlike the story that investigators excruciatingly, extract from him with their fact feeding and their feeding of plot points and all the things that they're doing, is that their story, that story that they get out of him and all that stuff, that's the story that changes. That's the story that doesn't ever seem to have any consistency to it. It's just kind of a mess of events and claims and that don't really work together. I mean, so yeah, it's just amazing. But anyways, that's an interesting point I wanted to point out there, is that is the one story that has never changed. So then we move on to, where O'Kelly is kind of, at the point where he thinks, he feels he's got enough from Brendan, and he's got, what he needs. He's got the confession. He's got pictures where that Brendan's drawn of like some of the situations and where certain things were, and placement of vehicles in the garage and this and that, and where people were standing. And so he feels confident or whatever that he's got like, something, here that they can use. And he's actually calling Len Kaczynski, and then he's asking Len, do you want me to call Fassbender? And I can ask him if he wants to come down here tonight. And Len's like, well, hold on, let me talk to Brendan. And then he has to get, so there's all this song and dance, but O'Kelly is sitting there like acting like the point man, because then he ends up getting permission from the jailers to hand the phone to Brendan so Brendan can talk to Len. Len talks to Brendan for like 5 or 10 seconds at most, and then the phone goes back to O'Kelly. Then O'Kelly ends up calling Fassbender and telling Fassbender to, that if he wants to come down there tomorrow morning after breakfast and blah, 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 and come in and do all that, and to, email in Kaczynski and blah, 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 blah. And they go through all this, and he's like sitting there just orchestrating the whole thing. It's him. He's the one sitting there connecting up everybody. So he's connected to Len Kaczynski, and then he's connecting in Fassbender and Wiegert, so that when they get this confession out of Brendan the next day, Brendan's family, nobody knows anything about it, that Brendan has gone to the police. But he didn't go to the police. O'Kelly was sitting here playing point man and brought everybody together and orchestrated the whole darn thing. So, yeah. So we all know that anyways, but that's the part to me that really sticks out about it. As he's doing all these things, though, is interesting. As he's talking to Fassbender, as he's talking to Len, he's like trying to assert himself, like to be there during the when Fassbender and Wiegert come to interview Brendan, that he be there, because he like has this like he has like this like notion in his head that like he is Brendan's friendly adult. I think he honestly like has himself convinced that he could serve as Brendan's friendly adult. Because at this point, nobody knows about him. He was brought in by Len, and he would have gone unnoticed. And I'll get to that in a second. But he would have gone unnoticed. Nobody would have ever known. But then you go on to, he wants to hurry up. He wants to hurry this process along right now, because he has Brendan in storytelling mode is essentially kind of what it is, right? Brendan's he's already kind of in a place where he's willing to tell them things that they want to hear. And he's actually got Brendan talking, so he wants to hurry this up. He actually wanted to do it that night, but Brendan was like, no, there was a movie that I wanted to watch, and so I don't want to miss it. And so they ended up having to make it for the morning after breakfast. So, but that's O'Kelly pushing to get this all done and quick and get the heck out of there, basically because he doesn't want to get tied to it. But yet he's sitting there as point man, and then he wants to be Brendan's friendly adult also, kind of like in the morning. It's weird. It's so strange. He ends up getting chased down by Robert Dvorak, who is obviously, you may remember his name. He's on the legal team of Brendan. He's with Steve Drizzen and Laura Nyrider, and he went and tracked O'Kelly down. He had to track him like across the United States and track the guy down and served him with a subpoena, so that the guy would have to cough up the tapes and everything from that confession on the May 13th confession, that then finally explained like the jailhouse phone call to Barb and all those things that the defense was like totally completely hands tied, couldn't even didn't know how to defend it because they didn't know how the heck it happened. So I mean, that's how trippy that is. So they ended up getting that information, which helped out a lot. So, and that's all because of, like I said, Robert Dvorak. So kudos to him. There's one point in here where, or actually it's further along. But then we talk about the day that Brendan Dassey was arrested. It's interesting. It talks about this here because Brendan's talking about the reason why he was getting skinny and stuff back then, because I guess O'Kelly's asking him. And he's like, I was getting skinny, but it wasn't because of this. He was like, he's trying to tell O'Kelly. He's like, it wasn't because of this. He said the reason why I was getting skinny was because I had this girl that I knew, and then when we met, she broke up with me. So he felt dejected or whatever. But then a friend of his had met another girl or whatever, and so he had set up a thing where him and Brendan were going to go meet, I guess, this girl and a friend or something. So Brendan was actually going to be going to meet a girl March 1st after school. So he's asking about his project, but I'll bet you anything what he was thinking about was he was supposed to be going with a friend of his to meet a girl that day. Does that make you any more pissed off about it? It makes me more pissed off about it. It makes me really pissed about it. Because not only did this kid not get to go and experience, the whole thing of being a teenager and going after girls and all that stuff. Not only he got stopped, interrupted in that so that he could get framed for murder. And where was the help? Where was the help, Lynn? Yeah. This is what I'm talking about. This one makes me angry. This is one of those points that really makes me angry. So, we'll now move on to the fact that, so we see O'Kelly is just totally acting as he's acting as like a point man and making this all happen. And like I said, Robert Dvorak tracks him down. One of the funny things is at the end of the interview, O'Kelly is trying to get Brendan, he's trying to get more little things out of Brendan, and Brendan brings up a friend of his. I don't know about who this kid was, who's Brendan's friend was, or whatever, but this kid was apparently wanting to be a suicide bomber as a career or something. I don't know. Like I said, don't know if it's a joke, but O'Kelly keyed in on that and was saying oh yeah, really? Did this kid have did he want to bomb the school? Was there something he wanted to do anything to the school? Or anything like that? And Brendan was like, no, he didn't want to do anything to the school. No. And then, O'Kelly says, oh, well, this kid, he doesn't really do well in school. He doesn't like school. And Brendan comes right back. And this is the part that I was telling you about that made me and my girl laugh. Brendan comes right back with, yeah, pretty much everybody in the world doesn't like, dealing with school. It was really good. So amidst all of this, me getting so pissed and angry about this, that was really kind of one little bright ray where I was just like, oh, good for you, Brendan. Good for you for telling him, what an idiot he was being. And I thought that was great. So, I'm going to go ahead and close out with saying, with Len Kaczynski, it all came down to him wanting to, first off, spend as little time as possible dealing with this, getting the maximum amount of money out of it that he could, which stood to be earned by turning Brendan into a prosecution witness. And the third thing that he was in it for was the media exposure. I believe it's the main reason why he decided to go ahead and take Brendan's case in the first place, because he knew he'd get his face on camera, and that would ultimately lead to him possibly getting, further promotions or moving up and becoming a judge eventually, or some sort of thing like that, which he eventually did. So that's what this was about for him, because when you look at it, he basically spent 1 hour with Brendan, pretty much total. He spent about an hour with Brendan, but he spent 10 hours with the media, in front of cameras or whatever. So, yeah. Brendan was completely failed by Len Kaczynski. I mean, failed seems like not enough of, not even an appropriate word or an adequate word for it. Gross negligence sounds like something that comes a little closer to it. But then again, I don't know if it's really negligence, because I mean, he was so active. He hired up, O'Kelly, this investigator, to come in and make it happen. So it's kind of not really negligence. It's, because negligence would suggest that he basically didn't do anything. He just totally ignored it or didn't bother worrying about it, which, as I say, doesn't fit, because he clearly did get involved and brought in O'Kelly. So that's kind of getting his hands dirty. So I guess gross malfeasance would probably be a better word. But anyway, he was horrible counsel for Brendan, however you slice it. But anyways, that's about it for this one, folks. I know this makes you angry. It makes me angry. But hopefully, Brendan's going to be out soon. Chances for him getting out are looking real good. He's looking like he's in a real good position. So I think we can all take a little solace in that. Anyways, that's about it for this one. This is strategy 6. Get the public defenders, or get the public defenders to work for the prosecution. And if you haven't already, please hit subscribe.